Well, as Cowboys, they're doing the great work for us, getting on NFL Live. It was good stuff right there.
The first thing that I think of when I see that is we saw Joe Burrow at the Super Bowl last year stumping for T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, and they both got paid.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing Dak Prescott stump for George Pickens, saying we want him back. He's an important part of the offense.
I love,
Is it going to work?
The statement of if I have to get involved,
I will, and I've said it before, right?
He restructure his contract.
Adam, what are the Cowboys' plans for Pickens that you
Listen,
know?
I think they have the franchise tag at their disposal. They can talk to him at some point in time. George Pickens indicated that they haven't had any meaningful or substantial talks at all. But the Cowboys know they have the tag that they can use on him and then speak with him about a deal throughout the offseason. Look, clearly Dak Prescott wants him back. Clearly some of his teammates want him back. And clearly we saw the impact that he can have on the Cowboys offense. He's an important figure for them. I think Dallas would like to keep him, but I think they use that tag as a placeholder to try to get that deal done and have months to do it.
The Dallas Cowboys take their time to get a deal.
I know.
What? Never happened.
It's shocking. I know.
I have such mixed feelings about this, and I want to hear your thoughts, obviously. Tagging makes sense, no doubt, but in terms of a long-term contract, financially, they can make it work. Actually, Dak would be a part of that because they'd restructure him, restructure CD, move on from, like, Kenny Clark. You can make it work. But we just had this conversation. You brought about Joe Burrow last offseason about the Bengals, and then we watched what happened to the Bengals defense. There are so many needs on this Cowboys defense right now. Pickens was amazing last year, and if you bring him back, that's once again going to be a top 10 offense at minimum. But I don't know how they fix that defense, Marcus.
It depends on how you want to play football. I wanted to ask Schefter a question because you bring up a great point, Mina. Where is Quinnen Williams on his contract?
Just thinking about him.
He's got time left on his contract, and one of the more appealing elements of trading for him was trading for him on the deal that he had in place. Now, at some point they could revisit it, but I would not figure that to be a priority when you have other priorities that you have to address first.
So MK, I believe, one, you have to determine strategically how you want to win football games. And seemingly right now, they're closer to being dominant offensively right throughout the game. So now you need competency. You need linebackers. You're going to have to hit in the draft. You don't have your secondary has been compromised as well. And I know that's asking a lot, but we've sat on the show a lot and talked about how these GMs have had a tremendous amount of success through the draft or bringing in free agents that play at a higher level. So that's really what it's going to have to be if you want to keep George Pickens, because George Pickens is going to want to be paid like a number one wide receiver.
Well, y'all know what's interesting? George Pickens and Micah Parsons have the same agent.
Yeah, David.
After what happened with Micah,
does the Bengals scare you,
Dak
though?
Prescott and George Pickens.
Yeah, here's the thing. I think there's a few ways to look at this because we're obviously talking about defense, offense, and it's nowhere written that you can't do both, that you can't, improve your offense and improve your defense. Spend money on your offense and your defense. Draft on the offense and the defense, right? But I've talked about this a lot with the timeline of specifically Dak Prescott. And I don't think Dak Prescott's going to be playing at a peak prime level for the next 8 years. I look at it as, you got these next few years where he's truly at his best, in his prime where he can do damage. And then in a blink of the eye, you're going to be like, not so much. You're not quite who you were. Just the way it goes, man. Just the way it goes. And Snorts, it's really hard because if you have the feeling that if you pay George Pickens now, it's hard to pay the defense. And you either have to let some guys go or you can't really work in free agency. You have to go hard in the draft. And then the problem is that you have to nail the draft and have impact players immediately. You don't got time at this point with the Dallas Cowboys League. You don't have time to be like, all right, in another couple of years, we'll be able to do this and that. Like even someone like the Eagles who were able to draft, immediate defensive players, have an immediate impact. It took them a couple years to develop like Jalen Carter, and they still had to go out and get a C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Like there was still a collection of other moves. So even when they were able to turn that defense around completely from, say, 23 into 24, yes, they needed to absolutely hit a grand slam on both draft picks. But then there was still, actually they drafted the, Jalen Carter like the year before that, or, whatever official year it was, and like so that's that's kind of how it happened. So it's not just a singular year process, and if you are already paying all your money out, then it's a lot harder to make those moves. And with that said, though, offensively, it's hard to want to move on from a George Pickens because you can say, oh well, we have this receiver, that receiver, and Dak's a great quarterback. And it's like, yeah, when you have CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, if your O-line is just decent and you just have a competent run game, this offense is going to be able to do damage. Dak is going to be able to do damage. Sean Hammer is going to be able to do damage with the field goal kicker who can kick from 80 yards out. Like, you're going to be able to do damage. And so the idea of parting ways with that or compromising that, it's tough. I understand why the Bengals made the moves that they made, because they're like, man, are you kidding me? Joe Burrow, you give him 2 wide receivers, 2 elite wide receivers. Like, the damage that we can do, how hard it is for defenses to control for that, it's brutal. And it would work if you could also draft and develop defensive players. And if you have the right coach, then you're good, man. You're good. And that is actually something that Jerry Jones has shown the ability to do. Say what you will about Jerry, but I think he's clearly drafted quite well over these years. Where he's failed is making these types of moves, these types of trades, this type of free agency act-wise, this type of hire. Like, that's where he's failed. But like, in terms of drafting players, I think he's been awesome at it. But it's like those couple extra moves that really put you over that next ledge. Again, sorry to keep using Eagles. I know the Cowboys fans don't want me to use the Eagles as a reference point, but it's like, you know how he needed to draft Jalen Carter, draft Cooper Dean Mitchell, but then he had to go out and buy C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Darius Slay, whatever it may be. He drafted Devontae, but then bought Saquon. So it's like, it's always a bit of a balance. And if Dak Prescott was a couple years younger, then to me it's a no-brainer. I'm like, I listen. You also kind of have to get a feel for how you think George Pickens is in terms of in the locker room and kind of that whole thing, and we know his work ethic and all of that. But I'm keeping that aside. I'm talking strictly just X's and O's on the field. But if Dak Prescott was just like a couple years younger, it's like a no-brainer to me. I'm like, I'm doing this, and this is when it's like, Jerry, prove your worth. Draft me some dudes on defense. Get after it. Draft me some dudes. You traded Mikey. You got draft what? And whatnot. Like, draft me some dudes. Then it kind of gives us then a cushion for a couple years. Then also now some of the guys that we already paid, that the way how, as a couple years pass, now you're going to have potentially more money to then buy a couple other players in that second or third year. And now you're cooking. Now you're like, all right, got elite defense. We got to elite offense. Let's go. But you don't necessarily have that timeline. And like I keep trying to emphasize in a blink of the eye, Dax is going to look a little bit slower. CD is great, but like not quite as great as he was. And like that was always my issue with trading Micah, because you're kicking the can down the road. You're not really, you're trapped between setting up for the future and setting up for now. And you right now, it's like you got to maximize what you have with Dak right now, what you have with this core right now. There's really no time for that development necessarily. And I'm just telling you, man, these players, 1 minute they're in their prime and ball, and the next minute they're just not. It's just the way it goes. And it's something that fan bases never want to acknowledge. They never want to face. And when I brought that up about Dak before, people gave a lot of pushback. And it's just like, honestly, my take was right when I said, like, you're going to waste Dak's year this year, and you did because you didn't make the right moves, in the offseason, especially defensively. You wasted arguably one of Dak's, not arguably, it was definitely one of Dak's greatest years, but maybe even potentially his best year. Like, you wasted that. That was a year. There's no guarantee that year happens again next year. There's no guarantee that George Pickens stays healthy or CD stays healthy or Dak. Obviously, Dak's been banged up and has had multiple surgeries. Like, there's no guarantee. But you had it this year, man. You had it this year. And because of the decisions you made during the offseason, your defense was bad, and you were not a great team. And you could have been a great team. If your defense was just good enough, you would have been by definition a great team. And you burned that year straight up. That's the reality of the situation. And so to now try to keep kicking that can down the road, it gets less likely that you're going to be able to just have Dak be able to ball out. I mean, I don't know if there's no guarantee that Dak just balls out in 2027, 2028, 2029. There's no guarantee. Patrick Mahomes looked like he was just going to be able to play forever. Blows out his knee. You just have no idea, man. You just have no idea. Josh Allen broke his foot now. You know, now that Josh Allen never getting injured, now he broke his foot. Lamar Jackson can't stay healthy. It's just, you just don't know. And so when you have the players at a young enough age, you have them playing at a high enough level, you have a good enough roster, you got to take that next step to take it to the next level. And now you are in this kind of tricky kind of situation where you're like, what do we do here? And yeah, I think if you were serious about winning right now, again, you'd have to look at how the money all works and you know, sell your cap and all that. But it's like you'd use the draft capital for players that, you know, that can have immediate impacts right now. Like you would be looking to do that right now. And yeah, I'm curious because I just don't think they're in a position right now, because then, you know, yeah, I think you kind of just get trapped with one foot in the present and one foot in the future. And it's a tough place to be in. And I think that's where they were in this season. That's why you punt Micah and you get draft capital. And then Jerry even realized, let me kind of flip some of this for a player that can make an impact right now. And it was too late. It was too late and not enough. I mean, that was essentially Jerry Jones realizing, oh yeah. And that's why if you were going to trade Micah, you do it before. This is why I kept saying if you trade Micah, you do it before the draft, because then you would have been able to immediately draft an impact player today. And now you would have drafted that player, and he would have already now played with you for a whole year. And now you're in year 2 with him, and then so now you're ahead of this whole draft and develop that I keep talking about. So I just think it's kind of messy, and now you're trying your best to make sense of it all and do with the best what you have, and I think it's a more complicated and a trickier situation. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about George Pickens and the Dallas Cowboys? Do you think he should be resigned? You know, the franchise tag, all that good stuff. Let me know your thoughts. I read every single comment, so you agree with me or disagree with me. Either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get into some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and absolutely love to see part of it. I want to build something that we all generally feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much.